20th century, but it was done in the year 2000 by Gianna Cologne Sullivan.
No, we're rolling. They'll be here.
From Maryland.
The ones that come just become part of it.
And so,
well, good evening, everyone. We're here with the Xavier Foundation, and we are have a panel, a distinguished panel of experts and interested individuals who are concerned about the further use and community uses for the St. Francis Xavier Grade School, a large unused school. It's at Spruce and Orange in downtown Missoula. And so I'll kick things right off with a question about this building in the context of urban planning. We have a number of distinguished panel members. I'll let them introduce themselves as the questions come up. I will direct the first question to Mr. James Weir. He's with the AFL-CIO here in town and has international experience in buildings and in the possibilities of urban design. So the question I'd like to ask is, where do you see this brick building, this St. Francis Xavier Grade School, fitting into the greater plan of Missoula, Mr. Weir?
Well, I think it's essential from my experience and my reading and talking to urban planners, architects, individuals, that the key to livable urban space in any kind of city is having and preserving a human scale, generally speaking, in the middle of cities. And what people are looking for is roots, connections, historical connections. They're looking for a city which is develops but also remains kind of the same. And I think with the Loyola and the Xavier complex, I would like to call it, I think this could be a marvelous opportunity to anchor the downtown to this building or this complex and make it a livable area and keep the historical context, because people, when they come to an area, like to see the historical development of a city. I mean, the example I can give you is after the Second World War all over Europe. I mean, Germany was totally devastated. You know, a lot of the Eastern European countries were totally devastated. I mean, they were bombed into, there was just nothing there. If you've seen pictures on TV, if you like the History Channel like I do, if you watch all these war programs, Berlin was a ruin. You know, there was nothing left of it. Now, how did they rebuild Berlin? And how did they rebuild Germany? How did they build parts of France that were in the war, and Belgium? They had an opportunity to go high-tech, modern, all the latest ideas. What did they do? They went back and took photographs of it as it was in the 16th century and the 17th century, and they rebuilt the buildings as they were in those days. And one of the psychological reasons is to give the population psychological comfort in the fact that they were building something that was like they knew before. And I think we have an opportunity to preserve the history of Missoula, and I think that'll be a tremendous asset, both financially and psychologically, for the community in Missoula. And that's how I see it, that it's a key. It's like, if you want to put it in the big box stores or the malls that are being built, and Tim can probably address this, that most malls that are built, you know, shopping malls, they have what they call anchor stores, like Sears and Penny's and Lowe's and all these people say, well, I see this St. Xavier's complex as a key building block of keeping the downtown and keeping it alive and keeping it on a human scale.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Those are very cogent observations, Mr. Weir, and thank you for those insights, because I do believe that you know, we do have, you know, a golden opportunity here, and I'd like to, we have here a number of people who have sent children through the Catholic schools or have attended these very buildings themselves, this St. Francis Xavier Grade School and then also the Loyola High School building, that are all on part of the now historic nominated St. Francis Xavier Historic District. The 4 buildings there, the church is already on the register, And then we, of course, also have the rectory, the Loyola building, and then the St. Francis Xavier School, all being part of a presently nominated for National Historic District group of buildings. Before I go to some of those people that are here that have already attended those schools, just from a standpoint of as a builder, I'd like to direct a question to Mr. Bernard. As a builder and your own feelings about, say, the soundness of the St. Francis Xavier building.
Well, as you know, we've had several architect groups go through the building. They've all reported back that it's structurally sound. A&E is one of the groups that has come through, and so is Oz. And the easiest way to look at it, if you want to find out for yourself, is just go take a look at the building from the outside. And the way to check an old brick building is just take a look and see if there's any cracks in the bricks. Because after 75 years, it's more than settled out. And when you look at the building, there's no cracks. And so it's structurally sound, has very little to do to upkeep it, just a skin job on the inside, some new paint, maybe strip the floors and put down a new layer of varnish on the floors, and you'll have a very beautiful building. It's about 30,000 square feet. 14,000 square feet is classrooms on 2 floors, and then we have a gym on one end and an auditorium on the other end. To replace the building is a few million bucks, or even more if you wanted to try to replace it at the same type of construction. That's just for the new modern construction, which is a lot more light duty and is not as long lasting. Buildings like this are real common to last hundreds of years, and there's nothing wrong with this other than a paint job. It'd be very easy for us, working with the Knights of Columbus and other groups in town, to refurbish this at a very low cost. I've helped out the Missoula Youth Homes. They did a project where they had estimates that would be about $150,000. When they finally were done, the actual cost was $60,000. So there's a lot of room for this. I was involved in a project out at the fairgrounds, the skating rink. Everyone said it was going to be an unbelievable cost. The reality is our out-of-pocket costs were a little over $100,000. So there's a lot of ways to get a deal done if you take a hard look at it and cut out a lot of the fat and the fluff that go on, and especially in church and public projects. There's a lot of people, architects and builders, and I've built for the rich, so I've been on the inside. I built a house just down from Gates. I got tons of story about waste, but we don't have time to hear that. But what they do is they come in and it's just like a big cow and they're milking it. And we need to cut out the fat and put it to use for the people and the poor, and we can get a lot done here with very little actual capital outlay.
Well, thank you very much for those comments, Tim, and those things are particularly true given the economic situation in Missoula, where a buck is really hard to come by, and a built space like this building is precious. It's built and paid for. I recently heard Karen Riedel gave an absolutely wonderful presentation about Notre Dame in Paris. It's become the absolute symbol of Paris, just like Old Main has become a symbol of our University of Montana campus. And an A.J. Gibson building, another exactly similar building was Sacred Heart that we no longer have, the Sacred Heart Convent and school that we no longer have. But Notre Dame in Paris was scheduled for demolition, and so that makes it particularly interesting. Before I go to Karen, I'll go to some of these panelists that have actually attended the schools. We have Jeff Stevens with us. Jeff, from the standpoint of, say, having been through the schools and knowing the buildings, could you comment?
Yes, I'd be delighted to. I was a student at St. Francis grade school from 1958 through 1962, and I have some very fond memories of the facility. It's a wonderful building. It has been noted earlier, it's very structurally sound. It was built about 1927. It has been nominated and declared eligible for the National Historic Register. So from that point of view, it's certainly a very valuable asset to the community. But I think, you know, the really important issue is not nostalgia for the past as much as it is the great potential that this building has for constructive reuse right now and in the future. As has been noted earlier, this building contains a large gymnasium, contains a very nice auditorium where I made my dramatic debut way back in the early 60s. And of course, it's got quite a number of classrooms. The second floor could very easily be adapted for use as a commercial or office rentals, thereby generating some income to help support this building and help support the rehabilitation of the building. And there are any number of community groups that are looking for facilities like this. And our past conversations with these groups have indicated that there's a very definite desire in the Missoula community to use this building and to sustain it in the future. So I think it's an enormous resource for Missoula, and it's an opportunity that we just can't pass up.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Yes, along those lines, you know, Father Fred Reedy, that Reedy Hall is named the hall underneath St. Francis Church, where, by the way, meetings are being held on a regular basis. There happens to be one this evening, Thursday the 19th, but they will be held on a regular basis in the future for interested individuals to take a look at the process in the decision-making about this building. But Father Fred Reedy did, he christened that back in 27. He was in high school at Loyola and christened that gym. But yes, and you mentioned that there could be a good a cash flow resulting, and I think that's very important because while some money could be spent to rehabilitate the building here and there, you know, from the cash flow, certainly that cash flow could be very important for a variety of purposes, including, you know, supporting various endeavors that have to do with taking care of education needs in and out of the system. Sarah, you also this is Sarah Hughes. Sarah also attended the Catholic schools and has memories of that and interest in that area, as well as participates actively in our community and attends our university. Sarah?
Yes, just from listening to what everyone else has been saying, I think that two things are kind of important that I was thinking of, that new doesn't always mean better. And I think that there's a big idea with that to have something that's better and more useful for the community, it needs to be brand new. And I don't believe that at all. I think having historic buildings and things that make it look like Missoula and feel like downtown Missoula are very important. The other thing that I was thinking of is that if there are offices and things like this in one part of the building, that it's very important that, it's important to me at least, that we make the main purpose of the building an outreach to the community and to these children that are living in this side. One of the things that was really striking to me is the poverty level of the children living on the north side and things like this. That's unbelievably tragic to me, that we have a facility like this and we have these kids, that we could be meeting some of these needs and providing for them. And I think what I would want to stress to the community is that that's a need that we need to meet. And we have a facility here in which we can meet the need. And so that would be what I would want to focus on with that. And what I would want to stress to people who are hearing this and listening to it is that any ideas are relevant and good and need to be explored as far as this goes. I mean, there are tons of like elderly housing type things or community theater for children that's without cost, that's at a low budget thing, fun dance classes, you know, any teen centers, any after school care or tutoring types of things. There's tons of kids at the university who are looking for opportunities to teach, you know, and do little outreach volunteer programs like this. And so far, you know, they're being sent to other different places and other schools. And if there was something like this, I mean, you have a whole handful of people there young individuals that would be incredibly willing to participate in things like that. And so I think that this is a very important idea and very important concept that definitely needs to be preserved.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, and you've just hit on something that really is important, and that is, the possibility of participation by our community in helping develop this building. Our community would be our entire community, and that would certainly include our university community, where student practicums are not only desirable and where the students have had a long tradition of volunteering, but also they have been institutionalized at the university in the form of practicums. And so that a number of hours, sometimes 30, 40, 50 hours of community work are required. One classic example of a long-term nature being the student teachers. And I'm told that sometimes as many as four student teachers are sitting in on any given class in the public schools or in the private schools in this town to get their practicum experience. And whereas if the possibilities of this building expands into after-school care, after-school programs, the possibilities for student practicums expand for our university. And so we fully hope, and that actually, that whole area does expand over into some hopes for for funding, because through private public partnering, these things can sometimes be accomplished where, say, either the public sector or the private sector by itself can't necessarily accomplish the funding. Those two entities together can bring together enough of a focus, especially for granting agencies and such like, to actually create an interest sector and a locale where this funding can be applied, and it is out there. It's out there, no doubt about it, and it's just a matter of Dr. Laskin. I see you paying very close attention to all this, and of course, there is a health aspect to this because this building is right across the street from a major Missoula hospital. Could you speak to those possibilities, Dr. Laskin, please?
Sure. Yeah, as a health professional, I teach physical therapy, and I'm an exercise physiologist, and I currently run a fitness and wellness program for people with physical disabilities. But I think there certainly is a need for people who are living without, the poor in the community and the children as well. But I kind of look at things as health promotion much more across the lifespan. We are an aging population as well. And the numbers of people as people age, and with our lifestyle as it is these days, issues of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke is growing and growing, as much in the able-bodied population as well as in the disabled population as well. And we have some wonderful facilities and organizations in Missoula to deal with primary healthcare concerns, and maybe not well enough and not good enough, but it's getting there and improving. What we don't address is what happens after the primary health care needs are met, whether it's a acute visit to Partnership Healthcare or to community or St. Pat's Hospital, but what happens after that, after they've seen physical therapy, the percentage of individuals that follow through with recommendations for activity or exercise, home programs from whether it's a physical therapist or a physician is very poor across this country. And so the way I look at this is that the possibility of having one aspect of this building being used as a place for people to go who want to work on improving their healthy lifestyle and their health behaviors. So whether it's focused towards getting more of a normal healthy weight, or whether it's dealing with preventing diabetes, heart disease, stroke, many of the secondary chronic conditions. One of the issues is not just keeping healthy people healthy, which is what most health promotion is focused on, but it's also working with the minority of our population. Only about 20% of our population has a demonstrable physical limitation or physical disability, but they account for somewhere between 60 and 80% of our healthcare costs. And so there's a real benefit to any community to try and keep those people who've maybe had a stroke or have some type of physical disability, physical limitation, whether it's work-related or illness-related, to keep them from getting another secondary condition on top of that. the issues of health-related quality of life, the costs of the primary health care system is quite high. And so one of the things that I look at in the research that I do in the programs that we're looking at across the country is to have facilities in the city core where many of the people with disabilities live and work, or would like to work, and have something available for them. And I think there's, again, all the possibilities of using the community, the university partnership. There's great opportunities for the individuals to do their exercise or whatever the activities they would like to do to promote physical activity, as well as some great opportunities for scholarship from my perspective as a university person. So whether it's my program or another program, whether it's focused on children after school, whether it's focused on during the day, the elderly non-working population, I think there's a lot that could be offered in a facility like this, not just hardcore kind of exercise like at a gym, which would be part of it, but also more of the kind of physical activity things, the dancing, the walking, the very social components.
Well, thank you, James. Actually, we do have a rather, Dr. Laskin, we actually, do have a rather broad educational possibility here in that it is a school building. And there's actually been 4 different educational institutions, functioning educational institutions that are very interested in using these facilities. And that goes along with I might just mention that Dr. Laskin has founded an agency and an initiative here in town called New Directions, and that's a very important with special help and with myself recently having come a little more acquainted than I want to be with osteoporosis and how it can break bones. In my wife's personal saga of with her bones, I will be very much appreciative of being able to interface with the New Direction Center ourselves. And in fact, thank goodness for this building project, because it alerted me to the existence of New Directions. So we have a parish, kind of a parish motto that reads, for our parish, a Catholic faith community in the Jesuit tradition. And of course, the Jesuit tradition is basically 2 things: education, which we've already mentioned, and also social justice. And those are 2, so that certainly development of this building could proceed right within those very missions. And or I use the term slogan because we also have a mission statement which just briefly speaks of service to Missoula and our world, and a commitment of service to God's people. So by all means, this building could certainly fit in well with the mission of the parish and the mission of the Catholic Church. We have with us Gloria Rourke, and Gloria has raised children in town here and felt I think has some feelings about the Catholic schools in the way that they've specifically been of assistance. Gloria?
Yes, my son graduated from St. Joseph's School, and we spent many hours there. Both my children went on to Loyola and graduated with honors. I was divorced and raised these 2 children by myself, and so the schools were an extension of my home. And I have wonderful memories and made wonderful friends. And a lot of hours and sacrifice, not just me, but by other families to keep these schools going and to attend the schools and to make different functions work. A lot of hours went into these schools, and so I'm hoping that that'll be a consideration as to the future, that there were sacrifices made. My family in Pennsylvania had a ready mix and block company, and I feel, from what I can see of these buildings, that they're structurally solid. I feel economically that our community cannot afford to tear down especially our Catholic Church, to tear down these buildings or even one of them and rebuild another. Too many of us are struggling financially. And I feel that it ties in with all the other historic buildings in Missoula, and it's a landmark. Even people who aren't Catholic look to this Catholic block, and it is a stability in this changing world, as James has said, and psychologically, it's good for it to be there. And anything to do with children, whether the school comes back and has actual classes there, or we do things in an outreach and maybe combine even a school and after-school projects. Anything to do with children is a worthwhile venture, because that's the hope for all of us here, not only in Montana, but in our country.
Yes, thank you, Gloria, for those remarks, because truly this project could be a model project for, as you say, our state and our country, for public-private partnering, faith-based initiatives, and, you know, in historic facilities. And, you know, I think one thing that's very good here is to recognize that the Catholic Church has been a big part of this community for a long, long time. Catholics have held positions of leadership in Missoula for many years, and in that sense, at this point, the Catholics, we have a precious resource, you know, almost an embarrassment of riches here. And how do we reach out to our community and say, look, this is a huge thing that we're undertaking, but, you know, like the Beatles say, with a little help from our friends, you know, we envision this building as serving our community in a way that would not in any way interfere necessarily, for instance, even with resumption of it as a day-use school. Presently it's completely unused, but certainly there are many, many uses that can occupy that over the next several years while further decisions are made about the location of the Catholic schools. The mention of the historic is very important, because actually Father Ravalli, who founded this state, Catholic Jesuit priest from Italy, who came and founded this by way of St. Louis, after 4 delegations of Indian people went to St. Louis asking for the black robes. Father Ravalli came here and basically at St. Mary Mission founded the state of Montana. Father DeSmet had been there a few years earlier. So, and at the same time, he founded something called St. Michael Mission in Hellgate, which was a log building. The log building still exists at Fort Missoula. It was moved to the site of St. Francis Xavier. So in a very real sense, this campus, this National Historic nominated district, is actually part of the founding of Montana. And in that way, yes, it does denote stability. It does have a psychological impact. And it's in that sense similar to Notre Dame of Paris. And Karen Riedel has been sitting there hoping that she wouldn't have to maybe answer a question, but she is an expert on Notre Dame. I can vouch for that because I've heard her talk, and it was a wonderful talk. Karen, do you see some relationships between our campus and the campus of Notre Dame in Paris? I don't, or maybe that's not so important. What do you see as possibilities for?
The one thing that no one has mentioned is what someone wants to do with this building when they tear it down. As I understand it, they wanted to build a parking lot there. And I just think that's just such a waste of all of the things that we have mentioned about this building, to turn it into nothing but that.
Well, I think we're hoping, you know, that we have great hopes that actually that things have, you know, somewhat moved on from that particular scenario. We have hopes. And that the new scenario is, how do we use it? And can you tell us a little bit about what happened at Notre Dame in Paris?
Well, now it is such a landmark. It is very revered. It's a big tourist attraction. It's called Our Old Lady of Paris. that has emerged as one of the oldest and well-known landmarks, historic landmarks, a building of pride. And that's what our church is, this whole block, this whole Catholic campus of St. Francis is what Missoula looks to with pride.
Well, thank you, Karen. And maybe since that brings us back to Europe and to the idea of say buildings and their survivability and buildings and how they were built in the 19th century. I've heard this characterized as a 19th century building. I'd like to bounce this back to Mr. James Weir, who is with the AFL-CIO in job retraining and has seen some good parts of Europe and specifically Scotland. Can you tell us about that, James?
Well, what I'd like to mention is I don't think Paris would be the same as Paris if it was a multi-story car park in the middle of the Seine River. I don't think people would go to Paris to see that. Looking down from the Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame is very, very noticeable there. A car park just doesn't cut it, I'm afraid. I think one of the things that we're here for is to help educate the public to the fact that, as Karen said, you know, that the potential use for this is a very mundane, knock the building down and just tarmac it and put stripes on it for cars. It would be a tragic loss if this was done. Most of the thinking in Europe and the rest of the world as far as ancient buildings is concerned is to preserve them. And not just to preserve them as museums or for use as icons, but to reuse them, refurbish, reuse. And this is what we're looking at, as far as I understand it, is what this is all about, the building, is to reuse it, refurbish it, to make it a place where people can come for multiple reasons, multiple use, multiple reuse. And I think if we look at it as a resource that we've got, that we can make a central part of Missoula's vibrant, developing community, I think this is where we need to focus, and not just utilitarian usefulness and to bring in cars. What is happening in Europe and what is happening in the sort of cutting edge of retail development in America is that the newest malls that are being built back east are built on an English model. And what you have inside them is a sort of green with benches and fountains and places for kids to play. And then round the outside of this is multiple use housing, and then the shops are underneath the housing, which I'm used to because that's how it was done in Scotland when I lived there. And what they're finding is that these places draw people, and people come in and they're probably not going there to shop, but when they come in there and the kids are there, well, they need ice cream, they need something to drink, and then the kids need to get a toy or whatever it is, or they may be browsing around and they see something that on sale that they would like, and it generates income, if you want to put it in black ink terms. It's a very, very good revenue source, and it brings traffic in. And discovering this in Europe, I mean, why does everybody in America, I think, well, I may be wrong, this may be an exaggeration, but everybody that I meet wants to go to Scotland or wants to go to Britain. Now, why do they want to go to Britain? Why do they want to go there? When I ask them, they want to go and see castles. Now, the castles were built in 1200, 1000, 900. You know, they don't go to see the god-awful Daily Mail building in London, which is an eyesore, you know. They go to see St. Paul's Cathedral. They go to see the Houses of the Parliament. The place that most people want to live in London that you can never afford is what they call the Mews, which were the royal stables. And the reason is that they are visually appealing. It's a very narrow place. You can hardly get a car into there. And this is where all the real rich people who have got a lot of money stay. They don't stay in the big palatial houses. They don't stay in the palaces. They stay in the small buildings with ivy growing on them in the middle of London. And this is what I think, where I'm coming from, is that's one of the reasons why I got involved in this, was to have a multi-use building, but also to have a place that's livable on a human scale, and we can take the development of the middle of Missoula or the downtown area and keep it on a human scale, because this is what people are looking for. You keep the traffic out. You don't build cities for traffic. I mean, look at Los Angeles. I'm sorry if there's any people who are from Los Angeles, but Los Angeles is an absolute tragedy, you know. The car dominates Los Angeles. you know. It's dominating Chicago, you know. And what they're doing in London right now is that when you come in to commute into London, you're stopped by barriers when you're coming into London. You have to pay a special tax to get your car into London. They just don't let you in now because the traffic was destroying the city. And what we've got is a chance to preserve the history. And I think it's a tremendous boost to the Catholic diocese in Missoula, is to present this as a gift to the people of Missoula. It's an absolute gift from the church to the people of Missoula. I'm not saying they should give it away for nothing, but it's a gift. The use is the gift. The intention is the gift. And if you want to minister to people, then give them somewhere to come. And it's right in the middle of Missoula. You know, if kids want to come in, they don't have to go from the middle of Missoula to somewhere else. They can all just come in to the center, and it's there. It's already there. And as Tim has said often, we've got 85% of it. We've got a building. It's there. It's paid for. And it's all refurbished. You just walk in the door and maybe fix the roof, the hole in the roof, and off you go. It's got electricity. It's got sewers. It's got, you know, light switches. It's got stairs. It's got whatever, you know. It's a marvelous. It's a marvelous opportunity to get multiple reuses for a building that's already there. There's multiple levels: psychological, physical, economic, you know, spiritual. You name it, it's right there.
Well, you've hit on some important points there, and one of them is this idea of the gift. I mean, in the sense that even if the Catholic diocese operates that, and that'll probably be the you know, the outcome of all this would, as a rental property, for instance, yet it would be of tremendous service to those that they rent to. And we do know that there's been there's more of an emphasis on mission in our church than on money. That's a given. And so certainly we were talking to one person recently that serves on multiple boards and told us of all the boards they serve on, surely half of the people, half of those organizations would like to have space in this building, like to be in here. You know, we've got various examples of that. And of course they're all rent payers. And of course that's important from the standpoint, not because of that finances dominate everything, but because finances dominate everything. That's why, and that's a chance to put in a plug for the idea of that we are ready as an organization to go after pledges of support. We are looking to our community and to our broader community of America and the world, looking for support to help bring this on board, to get over the initial costs and get it onto a self-sustaining basis. But by all means, I think there is a gift element here in that it's far easier to tear it down than to make it work. It means work. There's no doubt about it. And that comes back to, actually, we are the Xavier Foundation, and the Xavier Foundation is a group of caring people who really do want to, serve their community and put these buildings into use. Yes.
I'd just like to
and I'll pass the ball on to Gloria.
Thank you. I think every citizen in this country needs to be environmental stewards. We cannot afford to waste anything. We cannot afford to tear down these buildings. We need to be conscious of our environment and preserve it. It's a practical thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. So that was the extra that I wanted to add to what James had.
Well, that's a very good point, because having grown up around the concrete business, the concrete block business, you're aware of how many dump trucks it takes to, say, build a building. How much human effort goes into a building, and the serious responsibility that a building does represent for all of us as a matter of stewardship, by all means. And as long as I've just mentioned a couple things about buildings here, and we have a builder with us, Tim Bernard. Tim, just some ideas about where we go from here, how we get this building online, get it into use.
Well, I put together a simple project about a year ago when I realized that there wasn't a whole lot of expertise from the parking lot crowd and where they really wanted to go. We can put this together actually without any outside funding. We have by doing lease improvements from the tenants that would own it. One group that we've talked to is the Missoula Housing Authority, and they've said that they would be interested if it would all work out to rent the second floor, which is about 7,000 square feet, from between $40,000 to $50,000 a year. And so we would have the whole first floor, which is roughly 23,000 square feet, either to rent out or use, with a positive cash flow of about 40 to 50,000. Another project that has come along was the social work. They would come. They have one proposal to take care of the whole building, and we would just use it as we needed, the auditorium and stuff, the few times that the church needs to use it. And they would pay us $45,000, and they'd be doing good work for the people. We'd have to do nothing. They'd take care of all the management and everything. We just have to figure out what we want to do with the money. And I've walked through the building with the fire marshal. We can move in tomorrow. You know, there's just some minor roof repairs, though we'd actually like to just replace at least the center section of the roof. And we're looking at about 60 to 100,000. But when you've got rent coming in of just the second floor is 40,000 a year, it's very easy to see how you can put that together with either a short-term loan or some other type of a financing operation. So there's a lot of opportunities here to do stuff. It's just a matter of having the will. One thing that's been thrown out is the administration of the building. Well, the social group, they'd completely handle it. I'd like to see us use our foundation or some other group that would manage it, and then just work in partnership with the School of Social Work and other groups from the Knights of Columbus. They're always looking for good projects and stuff. And then, but let's say it's just too much for everybody. You pick up a phone. There's got to be at least a half a dozen property management groups in town. It's anywhere from 5 to 10%. And so that still leaves you 90% to 95% of the income that you have to figure out what to do with. And so that's a problem, at the very least, we should be able to do. It's time for us to start. One thing that I always tell people is everywhere I go, everyone tells me they're for children and they're for the poor. But quite frankly, I know very few people that actually do much of anything for the poor and for children. It's more lip service because it's good PR. And the bottom line is we need to make some changes here and we have this excellent opportunity. The building's already built. If we had to do this project from the ground up, it would be monumental. And we're not going to let them just flush it down the toilet.
Well, thank you, Tim. And in point of fact, actually, I think there has been some greater degree of hope that, people are taking a new look at this, the people that, are in control of the building. And we're just in hopes that that new look continues and that we do get moving ahead. I'm sorry, did I?
Well, I'm going to say something
Yes,
to that.
go right ahead.
It's something that a lot of people don't like to talk about, and that's typical politics. And quite frankly, that's what we're dealing with, our politicians in this thing. And if there's really a change, then they'll spend a couple of bucks and at least put a temporary patch on the roof. I mean, we can do that for just a few $100s. If they're not willing to do that, then quite frankly, to be very incredibly kind, they're misleading the people as to what their true intentions are. And I've played this game before, and I've played with people like this before. And I'm not going to put up for baloney anymore. I've heard it for a long time here. And there's been blatant misrepresentation of what's been going on. And that's what the truth is. And I've seen the blueprint for the new structure that they want to build. It's reality. It's not someone's dream. It's already been drawn up. Thousands of dollars have been spent on that new blueprint. And so That needs to be addressed if they're for real, because we've heard this before. We're going to change, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Show me. It's like the old saying from Missouri, the show me state. Words do not cut it from them. They're politicians. It's what's been going on for a very, very long time. Put up or shut up. They've got to fix the roof, and then let's see some real concrete actions. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue moving on.
Well, we do have great hopes that, as I say, that this process, and we are the Xavier Foundation. We also are an organization called, and it's a separate organization called Save St. Francis Xavier Incorporated, and we do have an active education campaign. This panel discussion here is part of that campaign. I'm deeply grateful to everyone here for participating. I think there's a number of panelists that we haven't heard from yet. I haven't been able to call on panelist Dan Norman yet. I will do so. But yes, the idea of the nights has been mentioned. Getting interested in this. That's a large organization, a large Catholic men's organization. The Daughters of Isabella is the corollary women's organization. I do believe that with, the parochial schools, with the parish, with the Xavier Foundation, with the Diocese of Helena, and with the people of Missoula and the people of our university all behind this, I don't see how it can fail. I do believe it will go ahead. And I think that's what's been sustaining us. The building has been vacant for a year. I think there are a number of us who are saying that's long enough. It's time to be making some real moves toward serious repairs. And I'm not quite in agreement with Tim. I see something more than a patch on the roof. I see a real roof job up there with the previously mentioned cost, as being a real sign of good faith. But that's a minor quibble. I'll go either way, just so there's some movement here. Jeff, I know that you participate deeply in a lot of the community, and that your father was a builder in this town, and that you were born here. Do you see possibilities for this from the standpoint of say, a community project, and specifically a parish community cooperation?
Oh, I absolutely do. Of course, I've been involved in the construction business in Missoula for quite a number of years. My father was before me, and the potential for this building is enormous. I've been involved with other community groups. I'm involved with the Carousel for Missoula. I'm a carver there. I was the site captain for the construction of Dragon Hollow. So I have been really involved in constructing other community-based projects, and I think that the potential here is tremendous, and it's something that we can't afford to let pass us by. In thinking, I really like the notion of St. Francis Grade School as a gift. When you think about it, it was a gift to us from the past, built by people who had faith in the future. And I think it's time for us to honor and preserve that gift and pass it on. And I think this is the opportunity to do just that.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I love to think of how this building was built. It was 1927. It was the decision, they made the move to go ahead early in that year. The bricklayers, you can only imagine the hod carriers and the bricklayers that swarmed on that structure to create what's there, and they were in there by September. So that energy and that faith and that strength and determination that our community has had in the past, and what the important point of that story is that if they had delayed any, if they had waited, we all know what happened in 1929. Forget it. No more building, no more dreams. They moved ahead in 1927. They did. That's true. And they knew what to do. They knew how to build, and they built. And I don't think those abilities are dead in our population. I think especially here in Montana. Another person here with the panel that has grown up in this state and knows this state very well. And Dan's father was president of the Senate Montana Senate. Dan has his own, basically, public relations business, and I'm going to call on Dan Norman for some of his thoughts with regard to the hopes for this type of a structure in our Missoula. Dan?
Well, just a couple of comments. Obviously, I support the concept of trying to preserve the building and putting the appropriate functions in there. It's a solid building. I don't think there's any big debate about that. I know that there, of course, depending on what would be put in there, there would be some expense. Obviously, we all agree the roof needs fixing. And to what degree, I guess that's yet to be determined. But I do think we have to keep in mind that this is something that is still a property of the diocese, and we have to eventually get them to agree to whatever we propose. And I think it's important that we make every effort to work with them in a positive fashion, and to if whatever has gone in the past, if there's been arguments and disagreements, I think we have to put those behind us. I think we have to work for a real positive chance to get something accomplished. It is unfortunate that the building has been vacant for over a year. It's kind of a waste of one of our talents. But you know, we could cry about that forever, or we could look to doing something in the future, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And Dan's referring, of course, to the proverb of the talents and how some people buried them and nothing happened. Some people they were servants, and some took them and utilized them for good causes, and in so doing, you know, achieved a form of greatness that we're still talking about to this day. But yes. Those are very good comments, and it is very important that we consider on this project that we consider each day a brand new day, and that we just while some of us have worked here for, in the case of some of us, many years. My wife, for instance, some 28 years on the integrity of the church, and it's come to become a real community and national resource. And Tim Bernard, in his case, 10 years, pointing out what are we going to do with this building when it does become empty. And well, now it's empty, so now it's time to move. And some of us have been to D.C. We are getting some very positive signals there. The big foundations. It's just we just have these wonderful opportunities out in front of us. James Laskin has Dr. Laskin has spoken previously to the health aspects. I just thought I'd throw this out, that one was a cancer ancillary group that does a tremendous support work for people who have been stricken with cancer and are facing either more cancer down the, like they say, that endless tunnel, or maybe they're cured, but they have to deal with the psychological impacts. Could you address, given the location, basically across the street from the cancer center, and this particular group does, I believe, calligraphy, poetry and calligraphy, and other applications of human endeavors and crafts to cancer psychological well-being. James?
Sure. I think for anyone with a physical limitation or a chronic illness, whether it's cancer or what have you, when we're looking at health-related quality of life, to maximize a person's ability to enjoy life, whatever time they have left, whether it's a long time or short term, there's many things that go into that. And obviously, my world is related to exercise and activity, but one of the beauties of a facility like this is that there could be many, you could sort of have many different activities happening at the same time, making it much more community-oriented. Some people talk about kind of one-stop shopping. You could go to a facility to do some of the more arts and crafts-oriented things, and could also do some of the more, physical activity, exercise-related things. The way that I look at physical activity and physical fitness with anyone with a chronic illness or a physical limitation is very often, if they're low energy, have pain, fatigue, convincing someone to, oh, you better exercise is a really hard sell. But for someone who maybe does have a desire to, write or paint or do carving or what have you in terms of a hobby or play with their grandchildren or be involved in volunteer activity, what I try to do with individuals is find out what is it that you want to do? What is your goal, whatever that may be? And then say, okay, why can't you do that? And they may say because of whether it's weight or pain or fatigue or lack of physical capacity, and say, well, what can we do about that? So we kind of approach the exercise, the activity through the back door. And so that maybe we'd have an individual that might come to a facility like, a recycled, regenerated building like this to do some of the arts, whether it's dance or drama or drawing or poetry or reading or cards or something very social. But they'll recognize that while they're there, if they are doing some other activity that's involved, it will improve their physical capacity so that they can do more and sort of grow from there. So I see that as a very big holistic picture in terms of not just a gym, not just an exercise facility, not just a place to do artwork or clay work, but to really integrate all that together. And I think that'd be a very healthy thing to do, and especially to do it in the core of the city. The cost, for me, if I was to do something like this, the cost, the least cost of space is very expensive. And so often we have these types of programs where it's more affordable to do it. But really where the people are is in the core of the city. The people who have less finances available, transportation's a barrier, and to have programs like this in the core of your city, again, speaks to what James and other people have talked about, a more livable environment. You might be bringing people in from the outside into the core of the city, and I think that's really valuable and a healthy thing to do.
Well, I might mention on that parking issue, by the way, although many of the people, if children are using this building, for instance, or people that live in this neighborhood, they'll just be walking to the building anyway. But, and we are nearing our wrap-up moment, the city of Missoula has offered to partner with us and is interested in partnering with us on the parking issue. And so there are hopes in that direction. And I just might refer quickly to an experience that you mentioned to me, Dr. Laskin, that where a particular school in Canada found a tremendous benefit from having actually a physical therapy, a medical type outreach right in a school where the kids then got a better appreciation for the whole spectrum of life.
Sure.
And
yeah, quickly I can explain it. In Edmonton, Alberta, there is a fitness and wellness program at the university, a very large program that, where I did my PhD, which I'm trying to emulate in Missoula here. Again, Edmonton's a city of 800,000 people, and the need was to have this exercise facility, really a satellite facility. And the Canadian model of schools, to make it short, is that the Catholic school system actually is a parallel system to the public school system. So it's a free system. It's not a private school. But where we found a partner was actually with one of the Catholic schools. And what we did with some funds is we enhanced their gym, their exercise facility for the benefit of their students and the athletes of that high school. But at the same time, the doors were open during the day to individuals in the community, both those with physical disabilities as well as the elderly in that population, so that they had an accessible, safe place to go to exercise. And the beauty of that is one, we had a place to send university students to do practicums and to gain experience. On the other hand, it also was the high school students that actually worked in that facility with those individuals. So it was a really nice thing to do that, again, brought the university outside of the university setting and into the community.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Laskin. Thank you, panel members. This has been a very interesting series of insights, many things that I hadn't realized. And I'm very much appreciative of all of you. With regard to our diocese, we are basically, while the diocese is the actual owner of the property, the diocese is made up of people. And so we're in hopes that if all of the people of the diocese in their communities, in their various communities in western Montana and specifically in Missoula, see this as rather than as a problem, see it as an opportunity. Thank you all very much, and until next time, we are the Xavier Foundation. We are Save St. Francis Xavier Incorporated. Thank you again.
the Reedy Center is fastest lightning.